I work third shift at a warehouse, so I'm used to being up all night and driving home when people are fast asleep. It's actually kind of peaceful most of the time. The roads are empty and there's something calming about having the world to yourself. This particular night was different though. I had been working overtime and I didn't get off until almost 3 AM, which was much later than usual. I was exhausted and hungry, and all I wanted to do was grab some food before I got home to my apartment. I knew that there was this 24-hour diner about halfway between my work and home that I'd driven past 1,000,000 times, but never actually stopped at. It looked like one of those old school places, the kind with the neon sign and the checkered floor that had been there since the 70s. I figured that this would be the perfect time to finally check it out, so I pulled into the parking lot. There were only 2 other cars there, which wasn't surprising given the time. The place had this dim yellowish lighting that made everything look kind of eerie, but I was too tired to really care. I walked inside and was greeted by an older waitress with grey hair and a tired smile. She showed me a booth in the corner and handed me a menu. The place smelled like coffee, bacon and grease, which was actually pretty comforting. I ordered a burger and fries and a cup of coffee, nothing fancy. While I was waiting for my food, I noticed 2 other customers in the place. One was an older man sitting at the corner, probably in his 60s, just staring down at his coffee. The other was a younger guy, maybe in his 20s, sitting a few booths away from me. What struck me as odd was how quiet everybody was. I mean, I get it, it's late and people are tired, but there was something almost unnatural about the silence. Even the waitress moved around without making much noise at all. My food came out pretty quickly and I started eating while scrolling through my phone, and that's when I noticed the younger guy kept looking over at me. At first I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, but every time I glanced up, he was staring in my direction. I tried to ignore it and just focus on my food, but it was making me really uncomfortable. The guy had this intense look in his eyes, like he was studying me or something. I started eating faster because I just wanted to get out of there. Then something really weird happened. The older man at the counter suddenly stood up, left some money on the counter, and walked straight out the door without saying a word to anybody. The bell above the door chimed as he left, and then it was just me, the younger guy, and the waitress. I was almost done with my meal when the waitress came over to refill my coffee. As she was pouring, she leaned down to me and whispered, "You should probably leave soon, honey. That boy over there has been asking a lot of questions about you." My blood went cold. "What kind of questions?" I whispered back. She glanced over at the guy and then back at me. "He wanted to know if you were a regular, where you might be heading, and if you were alone." I didn't tell him anything, but he's been there watching you the whole time. I felt my heart start racing. I looked over at the guy again, and this time he didn't look away, he just kept staring at me with this creepy smile on his face. I asked for my check immediately and threw some cash on the table, probably more than I needed to pay. I got up to leave, but as I was walking towards the door, the guy suddenly stood up and started following me. I tried to walk calmly to my car, but I could hear his footsteps behind me on the pavement. When I got to my car, I fumbled with my keys because my hands were shaking so bad. I finally got the door open and jumped inside, locking it immediately. As I was backing out of the parking spot, I saw the guy standing right where my car had been parked, just watching me leave. But here's the really creepy part. He was holding something in his hands. Something that looked like a piece of rope or cord. I drove away as fast as I could, checking the rearview mirror constantly. For the first few miles, I didn't see anybody following me, and I started to think maybe I was overreacting. But then I saw headlights behind me that seemed to be keeping the same distance no matter how fast or slow I went. I decided to test it by taking a few random turns that definitely wouldn't lead to my apartment. Sure enough, the car behind took every single turn. There was no doubt about it. I was being followed. I was only 10 minutes away from home at this point, but there was no way I was going to lead this psycho straight to where I lived. I started driving towards the police station instead, but this was further away and I wasn't even sure anybody would be there at this hour. That's when I remembered there was a 24-hour gas station near my apartment that always had at least 2 other employees working. I figured if I could get there, I could ask for help or at least be around other people. I took a sharp turn towards the gas station and the car behind me followed. I was going way over the speed limit at this point, but I didn't care, I just wanted to get somewhere safe. When I pulled up to the gas station, I parked under the brightest lights I could find, directly in front of the store windows. The car that had been following me drove past the gas station slowly, and I could see that it was the same guy from the diner. I sat in my car for a few minutes watching to see if he would come back, and when he didn't, I went inside and told the clerk what was happening. He was really understanding and said that I could hang out in the store for as long as I needed. I ended up staying there for almost an hour just to be safe, and the clerk even walked me to my car when I was ready to leave. I never went back to that diner again, and I started taking different routes home from work after that. I also started carrying pepper spray in my car, just in case. I also can't stop thinking about what would have happened if I'd gone straight home instead of stopping at the gas station. The whole thing still gives me the chills, and I'm way more careful about where I go and what time I'm out till, even though I shouldn't have to be. I used to work as a delivery driver for a local bakery, which meant I was always on the road during weird hours. Sometimes I'd have to deliver wedding cakes at 5 AM or pick up supplies from suppliers that were hours away. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but I liked the independence of being on the road by myself. This happened to me about 2 years ago on a Sunday morning. I had to pick up a specialty order from a bakery supply warehouse that was about 3 hours away from our shop. It was one of those drives where you're mostly on back roads and highways that don't see a lot of traffic, especially on weekends. I left around 6 AM and the drive there went fine. I picked up what I needed and started heading back around 10 AM. The weather was nice and I was in a good mood listening to music and enjoying the scenery. About an hour into my drive back, I came around a curve and saw this old white van broken down in the side of the road. It was one of those windowless cargo vans that you see contractors using, and it looked like it had been there for a while. As I got closer, I could see a man standing next to the van. He was waving his arms at me like he needed help. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s, wearing a baseball cap and work clothes. My first instinct was to just keep driving because I had frozen goods in the back that needed to get back to the bakery, but something about the way he was waving made me feel bad for him. I pulled over about 20 feet in front of his van and got out of my truck. The man walked over to me with a big smile on his face and started thanking me profusely for stopping. He said that he'd been out there for over an hour and that his van had just died on him, and that his cell phone had no signal in the area. He added that he had started to think nobody was going to stop. I felt bad for the guy, so I offered to let him use my phone to call a tow truck or something to pick him up. He seemed really grateful and took my phone, but then he started acting kind of weird. Instead of dialing a number, he just held my phone and kept talking to me. He asked me where I was coming from, where I was going, and whether I was travelling alone. At first I thought he was just being friendly and thankful, but something about his tone made me uncomfortable. Then he asked if I could give him a ride into the nearest town, which was about 30 miles away. I told him I couldn't because I had work-related items in my truck that needed to stay refrigerated, but he kept insisting. He told me he'd pay me and that he just needed to get to town and that he couldn't wait out here all day. I repeated that I couldn't help him with a ride, but I told him he could keep using my phone to try and reach somebody. And that's when his expression changed. He handed the phone back to me and suggested that maybe I could help him look under the hood real quick, explaining that he wasn't great with cars and thought that maybe I could help him see what was wrong. I didn't really want to, but I figured it would only take a minute and then I could leave. We walked over to his van and he popped the hood. I bent down to take a look at the engine and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The engine looked perfectly fine. In fact, it seemed like it was barely even warm, like it hadn't even been running at all. But more importantly, I could see the keys dangling from the ignition, and there were no tools or anything around the van that would suggest he'd been trying to fix it. I stood up and started backing away from the van. I told him that the engine looked fine and suggested he might want to try starting it again, doing my best to keep my voice steady and calm. That's when his demeanour completely changed. The friendly smile disappeared and he gave me this cold, calculating look. He told me to try starting it for him, and it didn't sound like a request, it sounded like a demand. I shook my head and started walking back towards my truck. I told him that I really needed to get going and added that I was sure somebody else would come along to help him. But as I was walking away, I heard the van door slide open behind me. I turned around and saw the man climbing into the back of the van. Even from where I was standing, I could see that there was stuff in there, blankets, rope, and what looked like tools. I didn't wait to see what was going on. I ran to my truck and jumped in, locking all the doors immediately. As I was starting the engine, I saw the man come out of the van holding something in his hand, but I couldn't tell what it was. I peeled out of there as fast as I could, spraying gravel everywhere. In my rearview mirror, I could see the man standing in the middle of the road, watching me drive away. About a mile down the road, I pulled over and called 911. I told them about the man and the van and gave them the exact location. The dispatcher said they'd send somebody to check it out and asked me to stay on the line until I got to a safer place. I drove straight to the nearest town and went to a McDonald's that was busy on a Sunday with lunch. I sat in the parking lot for maybe 20 minutes just trying to calm down and process what happened. The 911 dispatcher dialed me back about an hour later. She told me that when the police got to the location I described, there was no van there and no sign that anyone had been broken down on the side of the road. That really freaked me out because it meant that the guy's van was probably working fine the whole time. He'd just been using it as a way to get people to stop for him. I kept thinking about what was in the back of the van and what he'd been planning to do with it. I reported it to my boss when I got back to the bakery because I was late, and he said I'd done the right thing by leaving when I did. He also told me that from now on, if I ever saw somebody broken down on the road, to just call 911 instead of stopping to help. I found out later that there had been a couple of other reports in that area over the past few months of a man with a white van asking for help, but nobody had been able to get a license plate number or a good description of the guy. I still drive those same roads for work, but I'm way more cautious now. I keep my doors locked and I don't stop for anything unless it's a genuine emergency that I can clearly see. I also always tell somebody at work what route I'm taking and when I expect to be back, because there's no telling what might happen on those roads. I drive for Postmates 3 to 4 times a week depending on my work schedule. Driving is my relaxing side job that I do to help pay for extra things I want like vacations or clothes, while my other job pays for my more necessary bills like rent. So I never take delivery driving too seriously. I just go about it, and if I don't end up making a lot of money one night, it's no big deal. On this day I started right when I got off work at about 8. By 10 I'd actually made a decent amount of cash, more than most nights. Although I'd usually stop around this time, I thought why call it quits when I was doing so well. I decided to keep going until I either got too tired or the orders stopped coming in. I accepted the next order and continued to the restaurant. It was a medium-sized order from Wendy's with a regular tip, nothing uncommon. I drove through and picked it up and then clicked start route on my phone to give me directions to the customer's house. Except it wasn't to a house, it was a GPS location set near a grocery store 15 minutes away. I'd had plenty of deliveries ordered to grocery stores or other places of work from the employees, but it was only odd because they didn't put the store as the address, they used the exact location instead. Anyway, I started the drive up there, and when I got to the parking lot by the grocery store, I noticed it was empty. I pulled right up to the front and parked. Then I got out with the food bag. I took a look around, but I was pretty sure the store was closed. I texted the customer letting them know I was there. They replied straight away saying that they were around the building at the back and that I should see them right away when I rounded the corner. I was definitely skeptical, but I got back in my car and drove around to the back of the store. There didn't seem to be anybody there, just a couple of parked cars at the far back on one side of the other stores. I stopped and looked, but I didn't see anybody. This was when I started to get those really uneasy feelings. I was thinking that this might not be worth it, and I put the car back into drive. But then my phone started buzzing. I answered the call and heard a man's voice say, "Hey, we're coming up right now, we'll be there in just a minute," before hanging right up. I looked around again, feeling more uncomfortable. Something just wasn't right with me. I made a short U-turn and started going back the way I came, until somebody ran in front of my car holding their hands up in a stop motion. I braked and they came to the window. "Hey, you got my order?" I grabbed the bag and rolled down the window, handing it to him, but he didn't take it. I felt dumb just holding the bag out while he just looked at me. Then I heard quiet footsteps from the other side of the car, before the back door suddenly swung open. I dropped the bag outside the window and floored it as the guy by my window yelled at me to stop. I guess whoever was at the back door had just jumped in halfway into my car as I pulled away. He reached forward trying to shift my car into park. But after failing a few times, he rolled out of the moving car onto the pavement. I saw him get up and both of them running away as I turned the corner and got out of there. The police were of no help, saying that they would do what they could, but I never got any updates. I was stupid to fall for their trap, but I didn't think I was the only one. Doing some research, just 2 weeks before my incident, a delivery driver had a similar issue during an active delivery in a nearby town. Again, there were no leads on what happened. I think this might have been those same two men doing something terrible that I can never begin to imagine. Hopefully they get caught. This taught me a lot about awareness and making sure that I stay aware of my surroundings all the time. I'm not going to fall for this again.